My daughter's voice cut through the quiet kitchen. It was cold. Colder than I had ever heard it. The words were meant for her husband, Ricardo. But a simple mistake, a wrong tap on her phone, sent them to me instead. That mistake would cost her everything. Ricardo, I can't take having my mother in this house anymore. The phone in my hand felt heavy like a block of ice. I stared at the screen, at the little audio bar pulsing with her voice. My own daughter. Grace. Her tone was sharp with a kind of weary frustration I had never heard directed at me. She's a nuisance, the voice continued. She gets into everything. And on top of that, we're spending so much money on her. My breath caught in my throat. A nuisance. The word echoed in my mind, a cruel bell tolling the death of something I held sacred. This was the same daughter I had worked my fingers to the bone for. I had cleaned other people's houses for 30 years, my knees aching and my hands raw, so that she could have a life I never did. I've been looking into some cheap places, Grace said. Her voice was practical, as if she were discussing grocery prices. I found one that only costs $800 a month. In that moment, the linoleum floor seemed to drop away from my feet. The world tilted. This was the daughter for whom I'd sold my mother's jewelry to pay for college. The same girl who had cried in my arms when her first fiancé, Richard, left her at the altar. I had spent my last savings to convince him to come back, to give her the wedding she dreamed of. And now she was pricing my life at $800 a month. But the message wasn't over. What came next was worse. It was a poison that seeped into the cracks of my already broken heart. Also, I've already checked the house papers, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. It's in her name, but I found a way to transfer it to our name without her realizing. My cousin Carol, who works at the county clerk's office, is going to help me. My hand started to shake so violently that I almost dropped the phone. My house. My own daughter was planning to steal my home. It was the only thing of real value I owned. I built it with my own 2 hands, working 12-hour days, saving every spare penny. It was my security. My legacy. The place where I thought I would grow old, surrounded by family. The most painful part was the sound that came next. A small, triumphant laugh. In a month, Mom will be in the home and will own everything, she said. We can finally live in peace without that bitter old woman controlling us. Bitter older woman. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. If you have ever felt the sharp physical pain of betrayal from someone you love with your entire being, you know what I felt. It was a blade twisting in my chest. But what my daughter Grace didn't know is that her mother isn't as naive as she thinks. 66 years in this world have taught me a few things. Sometimes, the only way to fight back is with the same cunning used against you. I didn't sleep that night. Not a single minute. The words from the audio message played on a loop in my head. Each one was a fresh wound. I walked through the halls of my house, the house they wanted to steal, and I touched the walls. I remembered the day the foundation was laid. I remembered planting the rose bushes in the front yard with Grace when she was just a little girl. At dawn, a new feeling pushed through the pain. It was determination. Cold and hard as steel. I got up, my body moving with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. I went to my closet and pulled out my most elegant crimson suit. I put it on, feeling the fabric armor my skin. I gathered all my essential documents. My birth certificate, my bank statements, and the deed to my house. Then I walked out the front door with a quiet smile on my lips. I had a plan. And it was a plan that would change everything forever. To understand the depth of that betrayal, you need to understand me. You need to know how I became the woman I am. My mother, God rest her soul, always said that family was everything. She was a seamstress. She worked from dawn until long after dusk to put food on our table. We were poor, but we were rich in love and respect. Margaret, she would tell me, her hands never stopping their work. For family you give everything. To the last drop. I took her words to heart. When I got pregnant with Grace at 18, her father vanished. One night he was promising me a future, and the next morning he was just gone. His parents told me their son wouldn't ruin his life for a girl like me. I was shattered. But my mother was my rock. That child, she said, holding me as I cried, is going to have everything we couldn't. We'll raise her together. She sold her only 2 gold bracelets, her most prized possessions, to buy everything a new baby needed. When Grace was born, it was like a light turned on in my world. He was perfect. I started cleaning houses at 19. I earned so little, but every cent went to her. I remember walking her to her first day of kindergarten. I couldn't afford the bus. Her uniform was perfectly ironed, but my dress was patched. Other mothers arrived in fancy cars. I felt so small, so inadequate. But then Grace kissed my cheek. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered. "You're the best in the world." In that moment, I knew every sacrifice was worth it. The years that followed were a blur of the same routine. I'd wake at 4 in the morning. I'd make Grace her breakfast and pack her lunch. I'd take her to school, then work, cleaning 3 different houses until 6 in the evening. I'd pick her up, help with her homework, and tuck her into bed with a story. On weekends, I did extra laundry for neighbors to earn a little more. All of it was for her. I wanted her to have a better life than I did. My mother passed away when Grace was 8. Before she died, she held my hand. Her grip was weak, but her eyes were clear. "Margaret," she whispered, "that child is your greatest treasure. Give her an education. Give her love. She will take care of you when you're old. Our family's blood is good. She won't fail you." Those words became my mantra. They gave me strength on the days I thought I couldn't go on. When Grace turned 15, she wanted a big birthday party. I worked extra shifts for 6 months to make it happen. I spent $3,500 on that party. It was money I had saved to fix the leaky roof. But seeing her face that night, shining in her golden dress, it felt worth it. "Mom," she told me, hugging me tight, "I don't know how you give me so much when you have almost nothing. When I grow up, I'm going to give all this back to you 1,000 times over." I believed her. Throughout high school, she was a star. The best grades, lead in the school play. Her teachers said she had a brilliant future. But that future was expensive. Books, uniforms, school trips. I took on a 4th house to clean on Sundays, my only day off. I just had to keep her on that path. When it was time for college, the reality of the cost hit me like a physical blow. $15,000 a year. I was only making $400 a month. It was impossible. But a mother does the impossible for her child. I took out a loan using my house as collateral. I sold the engagement ring her father had left behind. I even sold my mother's old sewing machine. The day I took her to enroll, I held her hands. "My daughter," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "I couldn't go to college, but you will. You'll be a professional. You'll work in an office. You will never have to clean other people's houses like your mother." I cried that day watching her sign the papers for her business degree. There were tears of pure joy. For 4 years I worked like a machine. Grace always needed something. Money for books, for projects, for clothes to wear to presentations. I gave her everything. Even if it meant I ate nothing but beans for a week. The day she graduated was the proudest day of my life. Seeing her on that stage, hearing her name called. It was validation for every sacrifice. She hugged me after, tears streaming down her face. "Mom," she said, "this is as much yours as it is mine. I promise, now that I'm a professional, you will never have to suffer again." A year later, she met Richard. He seemed like a good man with a stable job. I was so happy for her. When he asked for her hand in marriage, I thought she would finally have the stable family I could never give her. But the wedding was another mountain to climb. Grace wanted a fairy tale. The venue cost $8,000. Her dress was $2,000. I spent $10,000 in total. I got the money by taking out another loan. The first few years of their marriage were good. They would visit me every Sunday. Grace would help with my bills. "Mom, I want to take care of you now," she'd say, handing me money for groceries. I finally felt it, the payoff. The grateful daughter my mother promised she would be. But everything changed 3 years ago. Richard lost his job. The financial problems started. So did the requests for money. It started small. $1,000 for bills. Then $2,500 for a down payment on a new car. Then $3,000 to pay off credit cards. I always said yes. How could I not? Looking back, the change started after I gave them that $3,000. It was subtle at first. The Sunday visits stopped. "Mom, we're just so busy," Grace would say on the phone. "Richard's new job is demanding." I understood, for I told myself I did. Then my calls started going unanswered. "I'm in a meeting, Mom. I'm at the store, Mom. It's too late, we're having dinner." The conversations we did have were short and rushed. Then came the comments. The little jabs disguised as concern. "Mom, Richard says you've been forgetful lately," she told me one day. "Are you sure you're okay living alone in that big house?" I laughed it off, but a seed of doubt was planted not in my mind but in theirs. One afternoon I visited them unannounced. I brought a pineapple dessert that Richard loved. I heard them laughing inside, but it took them a long time to open the door. "Oh, Mom, what a surprise," Grace said. Her smile was tight, forced. Her cousin Carol was there, the one who worked at the county clerk's office. There were papers scattered all over the kitchen table. When they saw me, Carol snatched them up and stuffed them in a folder. "Hello, Aunt Margaret," she said with a fake sweetness. "Just helping with some insurance paperwork." But I saw it. For a split second I saw my name on one of the documents. "Why do you need papers with my name on them?" I asked. Grace and Carol exchanged a look. A look I now understand perfectly. "It's just to update beneficiaries, Mom," Grace said smoothly. "You know, in case something happens to us." That calmed me at the time. But now I know. That was the day they started planning to steal my life. After that visit, a new pattern began. A cruel game of deliberate forgetfulness. They would invite me to lunch. I would get dressed, take the bus, and arrive at the restaurant, my heart full of anticipation. And they wouldn't be there. I'd wait. An hour would pass. I would call, my voice small. "Oh, Mom, we forgot to tell you we had to cancel," Grace would say, her tone breezy. "Richard had a work emergency." This happened 3 times. 3 times I sat alone in a restaurant, a single older woman at a table set for 3, feeling like a fool. I watched other families laugh and share their meals. The food I ordered tasted like ash in my mouth. They started excluding me from family events. I found out from my neighbor, Miss Rose, that they had hosted a big barbecue for Richard's birthday. "How strange you weren't there, Margaret," she said, her brow furrowed. "I saw them buying enough meat to feed an army." When I asked Grace about it, she brushed it off. "Oh, Mom, it was just a casual thing with our friends. We didn't want to bother you." Bother me? I was her mother. My heart ached with a loneliness so profound it was a physical pain. Then came the final blow, disguised as a loving gesture. "Mom," Grace said one evening, her voice full of false sweetness, "they're painting our apartment building. We need a place to stay for about a month. We were hoping we could stay with you. We'd get to spend so much more time together. Wouldn't that be perfect?" For a moment, a spark of hope lit up inside me. Maybe this was it, a chance to reconnect, to fix whatever was broken between us. I was happy to have them close again. That happiness lasted one day. From the moment they moved in, my house stopped being mine. Richard complained about everything. My television was too old. The internet was too slow. The shower didn't have enough pressure. "Margaret," he'd say, not even calling me Aunt anymore, "this house needs a lot of work. It must be hard for you to maintain a property this big at your age." Grace began reorganizing my life. She didn't ask. She just did. She went through my kitchen cupboards one afternoon. "Mom, these plates are so old," she said, putting my mother's china into a cardboard box. "I'm going to replace them with something new." She went through my closet. "These clothes are so out of style. We should donate them." Little by little, they were erasing me from my own home. I felt like a guest, a ghost haunting the rooms where I had built my life. Whispered conversations became the new soundtrack of my house. I'd walk into the kitchen and they would fall silent. They'd turn to me with bright, fake smiles. "What were you talking about?" I'd ask. "Nothing important, Mom," Grace would reply. "Just work stuff." One night I heard Richard's voice on the patio, low. "Yeah, we're already living here," he said into his phone. "No, she doesn't suspect a thing. Carol says she can have all the papers ready in 2 more weeks." My heart hammered against my ribs. I stepped outside. "Who are you talking to, Richard?" I asked. He jumped, startled. "Hi, boss," he said quickly. "Just a work project." He was a terrible liar. They started controlling my finances. "Mom, let me help you with the bills," Grace offered. "You shouldn't have to worry about these things." At first I thought it was kind. Then I realized she was going through my bank statements. "Mom, why did you withdraw $200 in cash?" she asked one day, her tone accusatory. "What do you need so much cash for?" It was my money. My pension. But I felt like a child being scolded. The worst was how they talked about me when they thought I wasn't listening. I was in the garden trimming my roses when I heard Richard on the phone. "My mother-in-law is getting harder to handle," he said with a sigh. "She's becoming very stubborn with age." Grace laughed in the background. "It's true. Lately she forgets things and gets very difficult." They started creating a false story about my mental health. My old friend Letitia came to visit. In front of her, Grace said, "Oh, Letitia, Mom has been so confused lately. The other day she wanted to go for a walk at 10 at night because she thought it was morning." It was a complete lie. I had never done that. But I saw the look of pity in Letitia's eyes. "Oh, Margaret," she said, patting my hand. "It's a good thing you have Grace to take care of you." I felt a rage so hot it almost choked me. But a more profound sadness washed over it. My own daughter was painting me as a crazy older woman. Strange visitors started to arrive. A doctor came to check my blood pressure. A social worker wanted to evaluate my living conditions. A man who called himself a geriatric care specialist came to talk to me. They all came because Grace had scheduled them. They never asked me if I wanted them there. During one visit, I was in the kitchen when I heard the doctor talking to Grace in the living room. "Ma'am, your mother seems physically fine," he said. "But I will note in the report that she shows signs of mild age-related confusion." I stood there, perfectly lucid, listening to a stranger write lies about my mind. They were stripping away my independence piece by piece. "Mom, you shouldn't drive anymore," Richard said. "Mom, it's better if you don't go shopping alone," Grace added. My world was shrinking. They were building a cage around me, and the most painful part was that they did it with a smile, telling me it was all for my own good. They told me they loved me even as they were slowly, methodically destroying my life. That Tuesday afternoon my world collapsed. It happened because of a simple mistake. A technological error that laid bare a truth so cruel, it felt like a physical wound. Grace and Richard had left early. They said they had work matters to attend to. But I knew something was wrong. Their whispers had been more frequent that morning. Their fake smiles were stretched tighter than usual. I was alone in my house, but it no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a prison. Around 3 o'clock my phone buzzed. A voice message from Grace. I thought she might be letting me know they'd be late. Maybe she was asking what I wanted for dinner. The thought was so naive it makes me ache to remember it. I pressed play. "Ricardo, I can't take having my mother in this house anymore." Her voice was sharp, filled with an exasperation she never used to my face. My heart stopped. This wasn't my daughter. This was a stranger. A cold, contemptuous stranger who wore my daughter's face. "She's a total nuisance, Ricardo. She gets into everything we do. Always asking questions, always there. And on top of that, we're already spending so much money on her." Spending money on me? I paid for everything in this house. The mortgage was paid off years ago. I paid the utilities and the groceries. The $800 they claimed they were spending on me was the money I had been giving them every month from my pension to help with their expenses. I've been looking into some cheap places. I found one on the outskirts that only costs $800 a month. With what we save, we can finally remodel the kitchen we want so badly and even get new furniture for the living room. Each word was a hammer blow. She was talking about me like a piece of old furniture. Something to be discarded to make room for something new. But the message kept going, a serpent uncoiling in my ear. "Also, I've already checked all the house papers. It's in her name, but Carol already explained how we can transfer it to our name without her realizing. It's going to be about $500 in bribes and fees, but it's worth it. My cousin already has experience with these kinds of arrangements." In that instant it all clicked into place. Carol's visits. The hidden folders. The insurance paperwork. It was all a lie. A meticulously orchestrated plan to have me declared incompetent and steal my property. My house. The house I had built brick by brick. The house where I had raised her. The house was worth nearly $500,000. My entire life savings. My future. My security. "I already spoke with the director of the St. Francis home," Grace's voice continued, cold as ice. "I explained the situation. I told him that my mother has early-stage dementia and that it's dangerous for her to live alone. He was very understanding. He says they see cases like this all the time. I've already signed all the preliminary admission papers." My legs gave out. I slid down the kitchen cabinet and sat on the cold floor. She had lied to a stranger about my mind. She had signed papers to have me put away. She was planning my institutionalization with the same casual ease one might plan a vacation. "The plan is perfect, honey," she went on, her voice full of dark excitement. "Next Tuesday we're going to tell her she has a routine medical appointment. We'll take her to the home, check her in, and by the time she realizes what happened, she'll already be inside and we'll have legal guardianship. Carol says that with the medical reports we got, which say she has mental confusion, it will be very easy to prove she can't make decisions on her own. The fake medical reports, the corrupt doctors, the evaluations I had willingly submitted to, thinking they were for my well-being. It was all a farce, a carefully constructed case to strip me of my rights and my freedom. I could hear Richard laughing in the background. The man I had welcomed into my home. The man I had treated like a son. He was a part of it. The best part of all, Grace said, and her laugh broke my heart into 1,000 pieces, is that she'll never suspect a thing. She thinks we're the perfect children who adore her. She still says, "Thank you for taking care of me, honey," when I bring her breakfast in bed. If she only knew that I'm giving her that breakfast to keep her calm while I prepare her funeral in life. A funeral in life. The words stole the air from my lungs. Something inside me shattered. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the humiliation. While I was praying for her every night, thanking God for such a good daughter, she was counting down the days until she could get rid of me. With the $485,000 the house is worth, we can pay off all our credit card debts, the car loan, and we'll even have enough left over to go to Europe on vacation like we've always wanted, Grace chirped. And the best part is we won't have to pretend to love her anymore. No more Sundays pretending we like her horrible food. No more listening to her repetitive stories from when she was young. My food. My stories. Everything I thought was a connection was just a chore for them. A nuisance. In a month, Mom will be in the home and we'll own everything, Grace finished. We can finally live in peace without that bitter old woman controlling us. Besides, the life insurance she has is in our name, so if something happens to her at the home, God forgive me for saying this, it wouldn't be so bad. Those final words froze my blood. They didn't just want my house. They didn't just want my freedom. They had coldly calculated that my death would be a financial bonus. I had become an investment, worth more to them dead than alive. The message ended. They started talking about what restaurant to go to for dinner as if they hadn't just planned the destruction of the woman who loved them more than life itself. I sat on my kitchen floor for a long time. The phone was still in my hand. I played the message again and again, hoping I had misheard, praying it was a nightmare. But it wasn't. It was real. And as the dawn light began to creep into my dark house, the pain and sadness inside me began to curdle. It turned into something hard, something sharp. Something that felt like strength. My daughter thought I was a naive old woman. She had forgotten who raised her. I woke at 5 o'clock the next morning. It was as if my body knew. This was the most important day of my life. I was no longer the Margaret who let her daughter walk all over her. Today I was going to show Grace who she was dealing with. I put on my crimson pantsuit, the one I wore to her graduation. I did my makeup. I styled my hair. I put on the pearl earrings my mother left me. I looked in the mirror and saw a strong, dignified woman. Not a victim. Before leaving, I wrote a note and placed it on the kitchen table. Left early for some personal matters. Will be back in the afternoon. Love, Mom. No details. They didn't deserve any. For months, they had made decisions about my life without my consent. Now it was my turn. My first stop was the bank. I was there when they opened at 8. Nora, the manager, had known me for 15 years. "Good morning, Miss Baker," she said with a smile. "How can we help you?" "Nora," I said, my voice firm. "I need to review all transactions on my account for the last 6 months. And I want to change all my beneficiaries." Her smile faded, replaced by a look of concern. "I also need to know if anyone has tried to access my account information without my permission." Nora's fingers flew across her keyboard. She frowned. "Miss Baker, I see several inquiries here from your daughter, Grace. She presented a letter, signed by you, authorizing her to review your statements to help with your finances." My blood ran cold. "Nora, I never signed such a letter. Can you show it to me?" When she pulled up the document on her screen, I knew immediately. The signature was a forgery. It was close, but the slant was wrong. "This is a fake," I said, showing her my ID so she could compare the signatures. "My daughter has been fraudulently accessing my bank information. I need you to cancel any authorization she has, immediately. And put a security alert on my account." Nora's face went pale. "Miss Baker, this is very serious. We will cancel all access right now. I recommend you file a fraud report. I will, I said. But first I need to protect my assets. I want to transfer all my funds to a new account that only I can access. And I want to change the beneficiary of my life insurance. For the next hour, Nora helped me lock down my finances. I moved every cent of my savings, all $8,750, to a brand new account. I changed all the passwords. And I named a charity for abandoned seniors as the latest beneficiary of my life insurance. Grace would not see another penny of my money. My second stop was the county clerk's office. Carol's office. I walked in without an appointment, a small recorder hidden in my purse. "Good morning, Carol," I said, my voice sweet as honey. "I've come to check on the status of my property. Grace told me you've been helping her with some paperwork." Carol's eyes widened in panic. "Oh, Aunt Margaret, what are you doing here?" Her hands trembled as she tried to hide the papers on her desk. "Don't worry, Carol," I said, keeping my tone light. "I just want to understand this insurance paperwork. Can you explain what you need my name for?" Beads of sweat formed on her forehead. "Well, Aunt, it's just routine updates." Her voice cracked. He knew I knew. I leaned forward. "Carol," I said, my voice dropping, "I know exactly what you and my daughter are planning. I know about the fake documents. I know about the plan to take my house. And I know you've been using your position here to help her." I pulled out my phone. "I have proof of everything." Carol slumped in her chair. "Aunt Margaret, Grace told me you couldn't take care of yourself anymore. That it was for your own good." "It was for money, Carol," I said sharply. "Don't pretend otherwise. Now you have two choices. You can help me reverse everything you've done. Or I can go to your boss and show them this evidence." Tears streamed down her face. "Please, Aunt, I can't lose my job. I have 3 kids." Between sobs, she confessed everything about how they forged my signature, how they created fake medical reports, and how they planned to use it all to have me declared incompetent. "All right, Carol," I said. "You're going to help me fix this. Then you're going to find a new job. But if you help me now, I won't press criminal charges." For the next 2 hours, Carol worked to invalidate every fraudulent document. She gave me copies of everything. The fake medical reports. The property transfer documents. All of it. My third stop was a lawyer's office. "Harrison Ford. The best in the city." "Attorney Ford," I said, laying out all my evidence. "I need your help to stop a fraud and protect my rights." He reviewed everything carefully. "Miss Baker," he said, his expression serious. "This is a very clear case of family fraud. We have enough to press criminal charges. What exactly do you want to achieve?" "I want justice," I said. "But more than that, I want my daughter to learn that actions have consequences. For 66 years I have been too good. Too generous. It's time someone defended me." A small smile touched his lips. "Ms. Baker, we are going to prepare a legal strategy that will protect your rights and send a very clear message." We spent hours preparing a civil lawsuit for fraud and a criminal complaint against Grace, Richard, and Carol. By the time I left his office, I felt like a new woman. I was no longer a victim. I was in control. I returned home that afternoon. Grace and Richard were on the sofa watching TV, acting like nothing was wrong. "Hi, Mom," Grace said with her fake smile. "How were your errands?" "Very well, honey," I replied calmly. "I took care of exactly what I needed to." I sat in my armchair and looked at them. "By the way, some people are coming to visit tomorrow. I hope you're here to receive them." "What people, Mom?" Richard asked. "Oh, you'll see," I said with a mysterious smile. "They are people who are going to help us clarify some important things about our family's future." That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. Justice was coming. And they had no idea. The next morning at 10 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," I said, standing up before Grace or Richard could move. I walked to the door and opened it. Standing on my porch were Attorney Ford, 2 police officers, and a public notary. The sight was deeply satisfying. "Good morning, Miss Baker," the attorney said formally. "We've come to execute the orders we discussed." I stepped back and gestured for them to enter. Grace and Richard rose from the sofa, their faces masks of confusion. "Mom, what's going on?" Grace asked, her voice laced with anxiety. "Who are these people?" "Sit down," I commanded. My tone was one they had never heard from me before. It was the voice of a woman who was done being silent. It's time for you to know the truth. Attorney Ford cleared his throat. He addressed them directly. Ms. Grace and Mr. Richard, I am here on behalf of Ms. Margaret to inform you that we have discovered irrefutable evidence of fraud, falsification of documents, and conspiracy to commit illegal appropriation against her. The color drained from their faces. They looked at each other, then at me, their eyes wide with panic. What are you talking about? Grace stammered. We would never do anything like that. I looked at my daughter. My heart felt like a cold, hard stone in my chest. Grace, I said, holding up my phone. Do you want me to play the voice message you accidentally sent me? In that moment I saw it, the complete and utter collapse of her composure. The dawning horror as she realized her own carelessness had exposed her perfect plan, and the moment of truth had arrived. There was no going back. The living room was silent. So silent I could hear the frantic pounding of my own heart. Grace and Richard were frozen, staring at me as if I were a ghost who had come back to haunt them. Attorney Ford, I said, my voice steady. Please proceed. The attorney opened his briefcase. It was full of documents, a testament to their betrayal. Let's start with the forgeries, he said, placing a document on the coffee table. He showed Grace the fake authorization she had presented at the bank. This is Ms. Baker's authentic signature, he said, pointing to my ID. And this is the forged one. The differences are obvious. I don't know what you're talking about, Grace mumbled, but her trembling voice gave her away. Mom asked me to help her. She was forgetting to pay the bills. Stop lying, Grace, I said calmly. There's no escape. I pressed the play button on my phone. Her own voice filled the room, cold and clear. Ricardo, I can't take having my mother in this house anymore. She's a total nuisance. I watched her face crumble as she heard her own words. Richard's jaw was clenched so tight I thought it might break. Turn that off. Grace shrieked, lunging for my phone. One of the officers stepped in front of her, blocking her path. That's private. You have no right to listen to my conversations. Relax, honey, I said, a cold smile on my lips. This is just the beginning. Sit down and listen to what you planned for your mother. The audio continued. Carol already explained how we can transfer the house to our name without her realizing. Richard shot to his feet. This is a setup, he yelled, pointing at the attorney. You're manipulating her to accuse us. Attorney Ford smiled. Mr. Richard, we haven't even gotten to the most interesting part yet. He pulled another document from his briefcase. This is the complete and signed confession of Carol Rodriguez. I locked eyes with Grace. I saw the moment she realized her accomplice had betrayed her. In this confession, the attorney went on, Carol details exactly how you pressured her to forge documents and create fraudulent medical reports to have your mother declared mentally incompetent. Carol is a liar. Grace screamed, desperate now. She made it all up. Oh really, honey? I asked, pulling out the small recorder. Because I also have our entire conversation recorded. I pressed play and Carol's tearful confession filled the room. She promised me she would pay me $2,000 once she had the house. Richard sank onto the sofa, his head in his hands. This is a nightmare, he muttered. No, Richard, I said firmly. This is justice. A nightmare was living in my own house, feeling like a prisoner while you planned to steal everything I have. The attorney continued relentlessly. We also have the fraudulent medical reports you commissioned. He showed them the papers where doctors had diagnosed me with dementia. Ms. Margaret voluntarily underwent a full psychological evaluation yesterday. The results show she is in perfect mental condition, with a reasoning ability superior to the average for her age. This proves all previous reports were fabricated. Grace started to cry. Not tears of remorse, but of desperation. Mom, please, she begged. We just wanted to take care of you. Take care of me? I asked, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. By stealing my house. By lying about my mental health. By planning to lock me away against my will. I stood and walked toward her. Grace, in that message, you also said you hoped I would die soon so you could collect my life insurance. I never said that, she screamed. I rewound the audio and played the damning words. If something happens to her at the home, God forgive me for saying this, it wouldn't be so bad. The silence that followed was heavy with disgust. Even the police officers looked sickened. There's more, the attorney said. We also discovered that for the last 6 months, Ms. Grace has been withdrawing money from her mother's accounts without authorization. He showed them the bank statements. $8,750 stolen in total. That was for house expenses. Richard protested weakly. That's a lie, I replied. I paid all the bills. That money was for your expensive clothes and fancy dinners. The attorney laid out the final piece. We also have evidence that you contacted the St. Francis home and paid a $1,200 registration fee to secure a spot for Ms. Margaret, all without her knowledge. You planned to take her this Tuesday, telling her it was a routine medical appointment. It was for your own good, Mom. Grace insisted, her voice cracking. You were getting so forgetful. Enough. I finally exploded. I have never been confused. You invented those stories to justify your greed. I manage my own finances. I cook my own food. I take care of my own house. I looked directly at my daughter. You know what hurts the most, Grace? It's not the house. It's not the home. It's that for all these months while I was hugging you, telling you I loved you, you were calculating how much money you would make from my death. She broke down completely, sobbing hysterically. I'm sorry, Mom. We were desperate. We had so many debts. Desperation doesn't justify betrayal, I told her, my voice cold as stone. You could have asked me. My whole life I have given you everything. But instead you chose to steal from me. One of the police officers stepped forward, handcuffs in his hand. Miss Baker, he asked quietly, do you wish to proceed with the arrests? I looked at my daughter, a crumpled, sobbing mess on my sofa. For a fleeting moment, a pang of maternal pain shot through me. But then I remembered her voice on the audio. Her coldness. Her laughter. Yes, officer, I said, my voice firm. Proceed with the arrests. Watching them put handcuffs on my own daughter was one of the most painful moments of my life. But it was also the moment I felt my dignity return. After months of feeling helpless, I was back in control. Mom, please. Grace cried as the officer led her to the door. You can't do this to me. I'm your daughter. I'm the only thing you have in this world. Her words were a bitter irony. She was the one who had decided I had no place in her world. Richard didn't cry. He looked at me with pure, undiluted hatred. This isn't over, you crazy old lady, he whispered as he passed. You're going to pay for this. His threat didn't scare me. It only confirmed I had made the right decision. After they were gone, the house was silent. It was a silence I hadn't experienced in months. I could breathe again. I could walk through my own home without feeling watched or judged. But the peace didn't last. The next day, the absolute terror began. Grace, out on bail, started a smear campaign on social media. She created fake profiles and posted in local community groups. My mother has dementia and falsely accused us of theft, she wrote. She's so confused she doesn't recognize her own family. Please, if you see her alone, call me. She's a danger to herself. The posts included photos they had taken of me without my knowledge. Pictures that made me look tired or distracted, edited to make me look unwell. The strangers' comments were like 1,000 tiny cuts. Poor woman. How terrible for a mother to accuse her own children. She needs professional help. My neighbor, Miss Rose, came over, her face etched with worry. Margaret, honey, are you okay? I saw some terrible things online. I had to explain everything, show her the evidence just to prove I wasn't crazy. Then the phone calls started. At all hours. Unknown numbers. Voices filled with hate. You're a miserable old woman, a woman screamed at me at 3 a.m. I hope you die alone. Strangers started showing up at my door. Fake social workers claimed they had received reports that I was in danger. Aggressive salespeople are trying to sell me security systems. People claiming to be distant relatives who had come to check on my mental state. Attorney Ford explained it was a desperate legal tactic. Ms. Baker, they're trying to create a public record that you have mental problems to discredit you in court. But the anonymous letters were the worst. They arrived daily, filled with poison. You're a failed mother. You raised a daughter who hates you. Your own children abandoned you because you're insufferable. You worked as a servant your whole life for nothing. Every word was designed to break me, to make me doubt myself. One night I broke. I was reading a fierce letter and I just crumpled to the floor. I sat in the same spot where I had heard the audio and I cried. I cried for my lost daughter. I cried for my shattered family. I cried for myself. What did I do wrong? I asked the empty room. For the first time I considered giving up. It may be easier to drop the charges. To forgive Grace and try to rebuild something from the ashes. Perhaps I had overreacted. As I was about to call my attorney, something stopped me. A memory. I got up and went to my bedroom. I opened the small chest where I kept my most precious memories. I found what I was looking for. A letter from my mother written just before she died. My dearest Margaret, her shaky handwriting began. If you are reading this, I am no longer with you. But I want you to know how proud I am of the woman and mother you have become. You have raised Grace with so much love. I read on, tears blurring the words. But if things ever get difficult, if someone tries to hurt you, remember you are stronger than you think. Do not allow anyone, not even your own daughter, to trample on your dignity. True love never seeks to destroy, to steal, to humiliate. The last lines gave me the strength I needed. Margaret, you deserve respect. You deserve genuine love. You deserve to live your final years in peace. If someone cannot give you that, then they do not deserve to have you in their life, no matter how much blood you share. That night I slept soundly. My mother was right. True love doesn't destroy. What Grace felt for me wasn't love. It was convenient. The next morning I called Attorney Ford. Attorney, I said, my voice clear and strong. I want you to proceed with all the charges. I am not dropping anything. I'm glad to hear that, Miss Baker, he replied. As I have some news. Grace and Richard are trying to reach a settlement. They want to avoid a public trial. What kind of settlement? I asked. They are willing to return all the money, pay for damages, and never contact you again if you drop the criminal charges. I thought about it. I would get my money back. I would be free of them. But they wouldn't face the full legal consequences. Attorney, I said finally. I accept the settlement, but with one additional condition. I want them to sign a full public confession. I want them to admit that I am mentally competent and that all their accusations were false. And I want that confession published in the same places where they defamed me. That's very intelligent, Ms. Baker, the attorney said. That will completely clear your name. A week later they signed the agreement. I got my $8,750 back, plus another $15,000 in damages. But more importantly, I got my dignity back. The public confession was devastating for them but liberating for me. We, Grace Baker and Richard Williams, admit that we falsely accused Ms. Margaret Baker of having mental problems. We admit that we planned to steal her property and created fraudulent documents to do so. Ms. Margaret is in perfect mental condition, and we invented these stories to justify our criminal actions. That day, exactly 1 month after I heard the audio that changed my life, I had won. But my story wasn't over. I had a new life to build. And I knew exactly how I wanted to live it. With the legal battle behind me and my name cleared, it was time to build a new life. I was no longer the Margaret who endured abuse in silence. I was a 66-year-old woman who had learned to fight for her own dignity. My first act was to rewrite my will. I called Attorney Ford to my house. Attorney, I said, I want all my assets, including this house and all my savings, to be donated to the Golden Hope Foundation, the charity for abandoned seniors. He looked at me surprised. Are you sure, Ms. Baker? It's a considerable estate. Nearly $500,000. Completely sure, I replied. I want that money to help people who truly need it, not ungrateful children who see their parents as an investment. I added a clause. If Grace tried to contest the will, she would lose any right to receive even a single penny. My second decision was to move. This house held too many painful memories. Attorney, I want to sell this property, I told him. I want something smaller, more suited to my new life. Within 3 weeks I found the perfect place. A beautiful apartment in a community for active seniors. It had gardens, recreation areas, and neighbors my own age who valued their independence. The condo cost $85,000. With the money from the sale of my house and the legal compensation, I had more than enough to live comfortably for the rest of my days. But my most satisfying revenge was yet to come. It was completely legal and utterly devastating for Grace and Richard. During our investigation, we discovered they had been lying on their tax returns for years. They reported low incomes to pay less in taxes, but lived a lifestyle that didn't match those incomes. Ms. Baker, the attorney said with a glint in his eye, I have some information that might interest the IRS. He showed me evidence that Richard had been working side jobs for cash and that Grace had been selling products online without declaring the income. "Attorney," I said with a genuine smile, "as a responsible citizen, I believe it is my duty to report any tax evasion I am aware of." A week later, the IRS launched a full audit of Grace and Richard. They discovered a $22,000 debt for back taxes. With penalties and interest, the total came to $35,000. To avoid jail time, they had to sell their car, pawn their jewelry, and take out high-interest loans. Their financial ruin was complete, and it was entirely of their own making. My next move was professional. The investigation had revealed that Carol wasn't the only corrupt employee at the county clerk's office. There was a whole network facilitating these kinds of thefts against seniors. With the help of Attorney Ford, we turned all the information over to the authorities. The ensuing investigation led to the dismissal of 6 public employees, including Carol. They also uncovered 12 similar cases in which seniors had been defrauded of their property. When the scandal broke in the local papers, Grace and Richard became the poster children for elder abuse. Their faces were on the front page. Family betrayal shocks city. Children plan to steal 66-year-old mother's home. The social consequences were just as severe. Grace's boss at her prestigious company called her in for a meeting. "We cannot have employees involved in family fraud scandals," he told her. He didn't fire her, but he demoted her and made it clear she had no future at the company. Richard's supervisor told him, "If you're capable of stealing from your own family, how do we know you won't steal from us?" He lost the promotion he had been counting on. Their own family and friends turned on them. Richard's sister refused to speak to him. "How could you do something so cruel to a woman who only ever showed you love?" she screamed at him in a public confrontation. Grace's friends abandoned her. "If she's capable of doing that to her own mother, what could she do to us?" they whispered among themselves. They became social outcasts, pointed at in the supermarket, whispered about in the pharmacy. Throughout all of this, I never acted out of hatred. Every action was legal, ethical, and justified. I let the natural consequences of their actions unfold. 6 months later, I ran into Grace at the mall. She looked haggard, tired, years older than her 35 years. She approached me, tears in her eyes. "Mom," she said, her voice broken, "please forgive me. We've lost everything. Our credit is ruined. Richard lost his promotion. Don't you think that's punishment enough?" I looked her in the eye. "Grace," I said, my voice calm, "I didn't punish you. The consequences of your actions did. You decided to plan my destruction. I just decided to defend myself." "But we're family," she pleaded. "Blood is blood. You can't abandon your only daughter." "Blood doesn't give you the right to mistreat, steal, or plan someone's death," I replied. "For 35 years I was your unconditional mother. For 3 months you were my calculating executioner. You can't ask me to forget that." "So you won't forgive me?" she asked, crying. "I already have, Grace," I said honestly. "Forgiving you was for my own peace. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean allowing you to hurt me again. It doesn't mean pretending nothing happened." I turned and walked away, leaving her crying in the middle of the mall. I walked toward my new life. A life where I was no longer a victim. A life where I didn't have to pretend that abuse was love. For the first time in decades, I was completely and utterly free.